every 4 years, especially too. We
Yeah.
get locked in, since 2016, of course. Mark, what's going on, brother?
Not too much, man. Just I'm learning what ragweed season is on Long Island. What ragweed season is?
The hell is that?
Apparently, the springtime isn't the only time allergies are bullshit, and I don't even usually have seasonal allergies. But yeah, dude, my nose and eyes the last like 2 weeks just are going crazy. I guess as the leaves are turning and all of that, ragweed goes crazy with its pollen or something like that. Again, not something we have really where I grew up, so this is all new to me. I was on the phone with a friend of mine, and he was like, "Man, you sound like you got a cold or something." I'm like, "Yeah, I think I do." He goes, "It's probably." I was like, "Yeah, but it's really just like my nose is stuffed up. The stuff that's coming out isn't weird colors, like no. And he's like, "Oh, bro, that's ragweed." And I'm like, "Huh?" Huh? He goes, "Yeah, man, I've been dying for 2 weeks." Like,
yeah, I never heard. I'm a New Yorker. I never heard that shit before, so I couldn't tell you.
Well, you don't deal with it in the city.
Yeah, I have my own allergy issues though, so I have my own allergy issues here in Florida. Yeah. That's enough to deal with. Anyway, so we had a vice presidential debate 2 days ago.
Something resembling one.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. We'll talk about it in a second. I'm going to play a quick clip. And this quickly for the folks who didn't watch it, listen to the podcast. For example, Washington Post put out a 1 minute collage of the best moments.
It's like the MLB and NBA like 1 minute highlight reels and the
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so here's a 1 minute clip real quick, and we'll react to the debate now.
I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball.
Well, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope he's doing okay. So. Christ have mercy. One of them is actually very dear to me, and I know she's.
I laughed when he said "Christ have mercy," and like in real time. I'm sorry, I did.
That she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life. The specific question, Governor, you gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. It's still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created.
No mics.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process.
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one.
All right. So what I took out of that whole thing was very civil conversation between the two guys here. And I'll tell you, in this Trump era, when all we've gotten was nothing but chaos, for the last 8-9 years of this cycle with Donald Trump taking all the oxygen out of the room. I will say, and look, I do not like JD Vance whatsoever. I think he's a fucking liar, all that good stuff, especially about the abortion issue. We'll get that in a second. But in terms of the optics, I think I thought he did himself a little more goodwill, because given the fact that he's the worst VP running mate in modern history by virtue of the polls. Very civil, very common. I thought it was a good debate, actually. That was mostly policy driven, to policy focus. Mark, your thoughts? I think you're gonna fuck with this now. You're gonna get like Marky Mark on this one.
All right, so number one, watching you go through that mental and linguistic gymnastics to describe that as a debate is the greatest indicator that the bar is on the fucking floor. Mm-hmm. Like, the bar is on the floor. Yeah. They managed not to throw things. Congratulations. So we'll go with Vance first, because my analysis of his is quicker. He simply he sounded polite, sure. But he didn't tell he didn't make like a single true statement. Literally everything he said was a lie, was an easily disprovable lie, an outright falsehood, or didn't align with his or President Trump's record. Just on and on and on. It's like, I don't even want to start listing them off, because it was literally every single issue, every single point. The comment I made to my mom afterward is, if I took a transcript of any of his 2-minute answers and turned them in as an essay to my 6th grade language arts teacher, Mrs. Firestone would have given me a D and made me have my mom sign the essay. because he would make the opening statement and then he would provide he's like, oh yeah, we're going to do the thing you're asking me, and then give you a bunch of platitudes and fluff, or make a statement about immigrants that was not true, or B, tie it back to some victory that the president did that he didn't. Like when a good example would be when he talked about his family being protected from pre-existing condition denial from insurance because of President Trump and all of his great work. Mr. Senator, pre-existing condition denial became a thing in 2010 during President Obama's administration, 7 years before Mr. Trump was in office. And I mean, that was just one. And that was literally every single issue. It was something like that. The other thing is, I just find J.D. Vance to be an exceptionally unlikable, disingenuous, smug piece of shit. Like, just to look at him. He has dead eyes and a fake smile. And every time the camera would like show him waiting to speak as one of the moderators was speaking to him, his tone was like, ugh, why is this woman
very smarmy? Very smarmy.
It was very smarmy, very condescending, and like I said, disingenuous. Like nothing about him comes across as honest or forthright or that he's any kind of person of integrity. And that is further proven by the fact that he simply sat up there and lied to the American people for 2 fucking hours.
For me, it's very simple.
Lie.
Yeah. For me, it's very simple. Because even though I would agree, these debates are about optics more than anything else. These folks look at the okay, do they look presidential? Do they deliver a speech?
Really quick, he does the same thing that President Trump does. He lies with such volume and such rapidity that you literally can't even stop them from doing it in real time, short of just interrupting them and telling them to be quiet.
But I keep telling my conservative friends this all the time. Also, for me, it's simple. For me, I don't twist myself in knots for one reason only. And there's 2 reasons really advanced here. Even as well as he did in the debate, and the other polls show that he at least drew even with Tim Walz on this. We'll see how that goes. Some may have him ahead. Whatever. 2 things for me
it matters.
Right. It doesn't matter. But 2 things for me is the reason why he will never get my support. The abortion issue, number one, he lied about. He wants a federal ban. He said it on record. You can't just change your mind now.
It was on his campaign website when he ran for the Senate. Literally, end abortion. Yeah. Big old fat fucking headline in red letters.
Anything else beyond that is just fluff. It doesn't matter. You said you want to do that. It's your right. I disagree with you. That's why I don't support you. And number 2, the biggest one for me is the reason why when people ask me why I won't vote for Trump, I'm legitimately insulted by that, because I keep telling you, once you try to overturn the Constitution, I don't give a fuck who you are. You could be Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, John Kennedy. You try to overturn the election, you're fucked in my eyes. To me, you're dead to me.
You've stopped.
End discussion.
You've stopped looking or sounding like an autocratic despot. You've become an autocratic despot, and we don't fuck with you.
And the fact that you can't even answer the question, if Donald Trump lost the election in 2020, and your response is we got to move forward to the future, bullshit. Because that is our president right now. Because he still hasn't conceded the fucking election.
Yeah. And what is very apparent from the Republican side, seeing a prominent member of the GOP get up there and talk, and watching the way he moved and twisted and bent over backwards, what's very clear is that the Republican leadership is very prepared to run the Project 2025 playbook the minute Trump is off the stage. Whether it's because he becomes medically incapacitated, they finally convince him to retire, he passes away, whatever it is, everything is basically just get it ready, let Trump do what Trump does, because we don't have the will or the ability to disconnect his base of support from him and just get them focused on our ideas. So we're just going to sit here and say whatever we have to say to appease him and the voters he carries. And then once he's out of the way, we run the Fourth Reich Republican handbook.
Sounds about right. Sounds about what sounds plausible, should I say? Obviously,
Yeah.
we're going to see if that ever
Yeah.
happening. You know, like I said, I think the VP debate is non-consequential anyway, historically speaking. But I think the VP debates could hurt you though. Could hurt a ticket though.
Yeah,
Help it,
and I think in the case of the Harris ticket, we'll get to that when we talk about Governor Walz. But referring to him as Governor Walz kind of takes me right into my point. One of the things that somebody can let me know in the comments or on TikTok, or maybe I watched The West Wing too many times or something, but it's my understanding that, for example, unless you have been a member of the same body or held the same position, it is not considered proper decorum to refer to someone of title by their name. And all night, Senator Vance continued to call Governor Walz Tim and man. And it's my understanding you would only call Governor Walz Tim if you had both served in the Senate together because you're colleagues. But that governor is a state level position, senator is a federal level position. It's like maybe it's okay between senators and members of the House because they're all members of Congress. But it's my understanding that a senator is not calling a governor by their first name pretty much ever, especially on a debate stage.
I don't remember if this happened or not. I did watch it last night. But did Governor Walz call him senator?
Almost every time, at least
Okay.
I can recall.
Okay.
It was either Senator Vance, or Mr. Senator, something like that.
Okay.
Or Mr. Vance. It was always on the list of acceptable titles.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just irked me because it goes to that larger point of just that Republicans have no principle, no respect, no decorum. They talk about being the party of law and order and obedience in the church and everything. But what's apparent from their behavior is that they have no respect for people other than the people who walk, talk, and look like them.
Yeah.
Tim
Walz, go ahead.
It's just that simple.
Yeah.
You're either one of us, you're either with us or you're not. And if you're not with us, we will dehumanize you in as much as we need to get you out of our way. Whether that's at a voting booth or a concentration camp, it matters not to us as long as we get what we want.
Yeah. Tim Walz, though, looked very nervous, though, early on.
All right, I'm going to just say a couple of things about Tim Walz and then we can kind of pick apart the nitty gritty because my overarching take is kind of nuanced.
Okay,
so
go ahead.
Let me just spit it all out. I think most of his performance was a little limp-wristed. I think he held his ground on the hand.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Exactly?
Like he or not limp-wristed, but like he limped into like he wasn't punching. You know what I mean? Like he was punching with like his wrist and his arms, like he wasn't lined up. He didn't mean it. Like, when you see kids like try to throw hands at each other and it just looks ridiculous and silly, like they're not really throwing punches. That's how most of his answers felt. But I think there's a good reason for that. He did give great answers and rebuttals to pretty much all the big issue questions. But he was entirely too civil to people who unapologetically deny election results and tried to interrupt the peaceful transition of power. He was way too polite about that. And a number of other issues. He kept saying, well, I think we agree on that. No, the fuck you don't. Stop it.
Commonality, they call that?
Yeah, it was a little too much. It was a little too much common ground seeking. It's like, no, these people want to end democracy. It's not out of bounds to say that. However, my suspicion is that Governor Walz, his mission and his objective obviously is to help counterbalance some of the obvious detractors from independent voters, particularly independent white voters and Republican voters sitting on the fence about specifically voting for President Trump, he is sort of the bait to bring them over the line on election day. And so
Yeah.
what I could see as being sort of the campaign strategy there when they're all in their smoke-filled rooms is like, all right, the vice president needs to be out there pushing the policy, smacking Donald Trump around the stage, blah, 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 blah. But Governor Walz, we need you to pacify Kansas. We need you to represent our message. But if we're going to get Mima and all these Trump voters and whatnot to consider doing the right thing and voting for our ticket, we need to not scare them too much. And if Governor Walz comes across looking like a black flag waving socialist, that's going to completely defeat the purpose. So while his answers to me were weak and lacking substance on a number of issues, like to what my voting interests are, sure. But then again, so are Vice President Harris's for what we're talking about mine. But I think if Governor Walz's mission is to bring in the independent voters, to bring in, the white voters who would scoff at Harris, to bring in people who previously voted for President Trump or might even still be intending to vote for President Trump, if that was the mission, I think he did it, and I think he did it pretty well.
Yeah, I think he wanted to also
On
show.
on substance, he won the debate, but he didn't hit very hard to win it.
He wasn't very.
He won points. He didn't win a knockout.
Yeah, I think he wanted to also make it about policy-driven stuff and more about what we as a party. I think that's the thing also too.
Yeah.
The Kamala Harris ticket is still trying to define itself too, also to the electorate. Remember, they just came in this thing a months ago. So,
and at the risk of being reductive, like her caricature is a bit more like the no-nonsense auntie who is not afraid to slap one of your uncles for saying something out of pocket to her. And she's the prosecutor and the cop. So like, let her be the bad cop, and Governor Coach Walz can be the golly gee, oh shucks, good cop.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice little balance to have there, though. Nice little balance.
That's what I saw. Like I said, to what my specific voting interests are, and like the issue. Like, for example, I thought the hand job they gave to the IDF, or the Governor Walz gave to the IDF right out of the gate, first sentences, was disgusting. Those were talking points that didn't hold water on October 8th, and they were basically straight out of the like Bibi Netanyahu preferred statement list. But it was gross. I mean, frankly, anything he had to say about Palestine and Gaza and Lebanon was awful. And I had to like plug my ears for that part. And then, of course, I don't even say anything about JD Vance because God knows he didn't say anything positive about Palestinians. So, that part of it was frustrating, but I didn't expect any more than that. If Vice President Harris is the bad cop in that mix, and she is not making bold statements about Palestine and ceasefire and ending armaments and whatnot, then you can't expect Governor Walz to do it. And one sidebar I'll note, just as we mentioned that, right before Hurricane Helene hit and UN week was happening and all the protests were erupting here in New York, with the Israeli diplomats in town, $8.7 billion in additional armaments was granted to Israel.
Right.
It was announced today that FEMA has a $9 billion shortfall of what they need in order to address the fallout of Hurricane Helene, at least on what they're budgeting right now.
Oh my God.
So we literally just gave them Asheville, North Carolina's money, and Georgia's money, and Florida. It's
so complicated. It's just so complicated
to blow apart children.
Could you argue also Ukraine, money to Ukraine also is part of that too? Also, could you argue that also?
I mean, of course it is, because I mean,
without politicizing it, people are going to say, "Oh, liberals love Ukraine," and
well, no, and I mean, it really doesn't matter, because when it was Katrina, it was Iraq and Afghanistan, and
correct.
and
Nothing new, right?
I mean?
It's nothing new, right?
Yeah, it's like insert conflict blank, subtract disaster blank, and I bet you have an almost 1-to-1, if not 10-to-1 on the war
And
side.
that's kind of, but to be honest with you, that's kind of where, like, for a simpleton, a simple voter who doesn't follow like you and I every day, where Donald Trump's appeal comes through is that he's a nationalist first, America first, and you hear shit like this, the America first argument becomes more.
Except he'd have given Bibi Netanyahu 12
Oh,
billion.
no, we know the truth.
And on his budget, FEMA would have a shortfall of 14
we know the
billion.
truth. Because on Israel, there's bipartisan support on the Israel thing on both parties. That is not a partisan.
He'd be like, "Yo, Bibi, you want some nukes? Just do it."
Yes,
once,
exactly.
bruh.
So again, but again,
quit wasting all your time and money.
Right.
Just drop one.
Exactly. But Mark, again, you and I are guys that follow this every day. The average Tom or the average Jane who is working a job, not following MSNBC or Fox News every day, they see that, they hear that, and say, well, and this guy is saying America first. It's going to resonate to the people like them.
Yeah.
That's just a reality.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always sympathetic to people who may not have the same political views as I do. At the very least, be, inclusive in the way to at least get understanding where they are. And obviously, you present them.
And to the people who would just immediately start going, well, yeah, but that's Biden and Harris giving that money to Israel. President Trump obliterated FEMA when he was in office. He obliterated FEMA and he completely handcuffed and kneecapped their ability to do anything in regards to disaster response. Oh, and lest we forget the pandemic.
Exactly. The dismantling the pandemic office. What do you call it?
Yeah. And then the virus hits.
Yeah. So we can play that game both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's every president, at least in our adult lives. We'll just go from President Bush, just from W. It's the same thing. We fund conflict over disaster response.
One of my really good friends this morning, we got into it this morning on Twitter because I had shared something about JD Vance. I shared the ad because ever since that whole Vance statement about the not surviving the election in 2020 for Joe Biden, and when Vance asked him, when Walz asked him about that on the debate and his response, and there's been an ad about this. I haven't seen the ad yet. It's a really good ad. I should look it up right now, actually, if I get a chance.
I'm actually not familiar with this.
No, but my boy and I got into like a little bit of a not a fight, but we got into a little argument this morning on Twitter about that because he brings up the whole idea about what about Hillary Clinton and Stacey Abrams not conceding an election? I'm like, but they did concede the election eventually. Well, not they disagreed with the results early on. They still conceded the election. Donald Trump is now nearly 4 years removed from this whole thing. Yeah. And he still today has not conceded the election.
Hillary Clinton conceded on election night early enough that protests broke out on the streets of New York, and there was a march to Trump Tower. I know because one of my friends was texting me from within the march. Like, it was at, I want to say,
at 3 a.m.
It was like 3 a.m. that
Eastern time. When I was awake still for that.
Yeah, it was 2 or 3 Eastern because I was I remember vividly. You were one of the people I was texting that night, and I was in Florida, if you recall. Because at the time I was living in California, but I was in Florida for a hotel conference. And so I was texting with you, and my friend also from California was in New York, and she was like, apparently, Secretary Clinton's conceding, there's marches breaking out, I'm going to Trump Tower to flip this fucker off. Something like that.
I'm going to find it right now, the new ad. I don't see it. Shit. I don't know. It's a great ad though. It really is a great ad.
There you go. Plug in. We gotta talk to your producer, man, because that's sloppy prep work. How was that?
Yeah, come on, man. What the fuck, man?
Where's SOT2? What the hell?
Anyway, we got into the fight today about him and I got into it. And he's like, well, what about them illegitimizing, the president as a result, illegitimizing Trump and this that. I go, it doesn't matter. I don't even care if Trump.
The Electoral College invalidated Trump. Knowing
that, and I told my buddy, I don't care if Democrats illegitimize Trump, so long as you concede the fucking election. I don't give a fuck. You talk about semantics here. It's a yes or no question. Did you concede or not? You did not. And that's what's bothering me. I'm sorry.
Secretary Clinton did not proceed to go on a 4-year rally tour saying that she actually won the election and convincing her followers that she actually won the election. Like, what the fuck are we even talking about?
Like the comparison is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous comparison. It really is.
She didn't rally thousands of supporters to the steps of the Capitol to kick the door down and attempt lynching members of Congress and the Vice President of the United States in an effort to halt the certification of an election. Her followers knitted pink pussy hats and held hands in the grass. That's what they did on January 6th or whatever it was. Or, that when that huge women's march happened,
I found it. It's on my Twitter page. Hold
the
on.
ad.
Yeah, I found it. Yeah,
that was good vamping to give you time, right?
No, because I had it on my Twitter page earlier. I had to find it because this is where the argument my buddy and I started was on this thread. Picking it up right now. Hold on, right here. Here, 1 second. I think it's right here. Hold on. Is it the whole ad here? Yes, the whole ad. Yeah. Hold on. Play from here. 3, 6, 9, and go.
It's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power.
He is still saying he didn't lose the election. How would you say that? Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future.
That is a damning non-answer.
It is.
America, I think you've got a really clear choice of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
It's really
and I keep telling my conservative friends, like, you guys don't get it. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, it's one thing if you vote for Trump on policy, and I get all that. Don't bullshit me with the whole like, oh, but this, all that. No, stop. Okay.
Yeah, and
because now you're insulting me. Now, don't insult me.
And on the surface, real quick, the only thing I would note is that they should have gone darker with the J6 footage. Like, that was super tame footage that they showed. It's like, yeah, it invokes things, but you should have been way more triggered.
Maybe it's in the later on
in
the month.
Yeah, it's lower. That bullet is lower down in the magazine. We haven't gotten to it yet, but yeah, that's the only note I would give is I would have gone darker and more intense with the J6 footage. But that was otherwise a perfect ad. That was beautifully cut.
No big